Our next speaker is someone who understands the solutions for ending gun violence are not limited to ideas generated by Congress or state legislators. As a businessman and an entrepreneur, Andrew Yang knows the complex problem of gun violence will require engagement from the private sector and innovation from the gun manufacturers themselves. He has talked about holding the gun industry accountable while highlighting the role that gun suicides and city gun violence play in this epidemic. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Andrew Yang. Thank you so much for being here. My question to you is, if elected President of the United States, how will you prioritize gun safety in your administration?
First, I want to thank everyone here for your passion and leadership in activating our country around the epidemic of gun violence. I just want to applaud you all for being here. I'm a parent myself. I've got 2 young boys who are 6 and 3, and I cannot imagine coming of age in an era where school shootings are so commonplace that students are doing active shooter drills in their schools. And my goal is to see to it, my boys are too young right now to understand what's going on in our country, and I want to see to it that hopefully by the time they arrive in school that we don't have a need for these drills anymore. And you're all making that happen. I just can't thank you enough. As president, I would prioritize attacking gun violence on many, many fronts, because we have to know this is a very multifaceted problem. I believe I'm candidate number 17 on the stage today. And I have a feeling you've heard a lot of the same things from each of us. And it's because we're aligned. We're Democrats, we agree, we have to get these laws passed, we have to beat the NRA's lobbying, we have to really activate the will of the American people because the vast majority of us agree on these issues. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that I would emphasize that are a little bit different than the other candidates, though those are the core things we need to get done. So a couple of things. I'm a numbers guy. 3% of Americans own 50% of the guns in this country. So if you do the numbers on that, that means each of those individual Americans owns dozens of guns. The gun ownership is very much concentrated in the hands of a certain number of people. The raw number of guns in this country is between 300 and 400 million. That's 1 gun for every man, woman, and child in the country. So whatever we do, we have to try and reduce that supply of guns over time. Because if you have a country that has that many firearms, even if we effectively pass some of these laws, that's not going to get that supply down very quickly. So one thing we should do is we should follow the example of other countries and have essentially a perpetual gun buyback, where anytime anyone wants to sell their gun, we'll be like, we'll snap it up from you just like that. And we should have a $1 billion fund just letting people know, like, look, anytime you get tired of the guns, you can even trade in the old one you don't like as much anymore. Like, we'll give you good value on it. And that'll actually be a really good pitch to some gun owners, because we have to get the supply down. The second thing is we can work with the gun manufacturers to try and make the guns safer. And the thing that makes me so upset is that whenever, I mean, there's so many things about this that are incredibly upsetting to all of us. But when there's a shooting in this country, did you know the stocks of gun manufacturers actually go up? Now why is that? Because people buy more guns because they're afraid of regulation. So if you're a gun manufacturer, what are your incentives to try and make your gun safer or reduce mass shootings? 0. You actually make money when there's a shooting, as long as you can hold the line on legislation. So one of my proposals is to fine gun manufacturers when their guns are used in a mass shooting. Because, like it or not, in this country, money has overrun so much of our politics, money has overrun so much of our society, and if you're a gun manufacturer, you gotta hit them where it hurts. You say to them, do the right thing, they don't care. You say, hey, anytime your product gets used in a way that kills American citizens, we're gonna hit you in the wallet. Do you think that might change their attitude? Yeah, that would work. It's about one of the only things that would work. And so what we do is we have them, in economic terms, it's called internalizing the cost. It's like right now we're all bearing the cost. Our families, our communities, our children. We have to put the cost back on the gun manufacturers. And then when the gun manufacturers come to the table and say, okay, I hate getting fined, I hate the PR associated saying that this was my product, then we say, here are the things you can do that'll make us safer. So you can make it so that you don't have these interchangeable parts that allow you to upgrade guns in ways that make them more dangerous for people. As someone who loves technology, did you all know that you can actually have guns that are signature guns that can only be fired by the owner that recognize you based on the grip? So it's not a fingerprint thing, it's just like the size of your hand, the pressure from different fingers. A lot of gun owners would actually like that because it makes their gun more personalized. It's like a James Bond gun. No? So you can pitch this and say, your gun, only you can fire it, and that makes us safer. Because then if that gun owner's child gets a hold of the gun, they can't do anything with it. So what we do is, and right now, that technology is not being applied in the marketplace because the gun manufacturers don't think it's in their interest. So we have to make it in their interest, and then we have to push personalized guns out in the marketplace that will make us all safer. So here are a couple of the things that I think I'm proposing that are a little bit different. On the lobbying side, again, money has overtaken our society. So how are we going to make it so that the NRA lobby loses to the people? You all have been passionate and volunteering for years, and we still have not gotten this done. And it's not because of a lack of passion or activism on your part, clearly. It's because, again, our government's held captive by the money. So the solution is to put 100 democracy dollars in the hands of every American that enable us to just have $100 a year that only we can give to our candidates. This would wash out the lobbyist cash by a factor of 8 to 1. So then if you're a legislator and you do something that makes us happy, we give you $100, that's like, over time it's millions of dollars. And then the gun lobbyist says, hey, I've got 100,000 for you. They'll be like, I don't care about your 100,000. I'm getting millions from the people of the United States. So here are some of the big moves that we have to make to try and make ourselves safer. I'm aligned with the Democrats on all of the things we have to do, but we have to do more than that. And the final thing I'll say before I start taking questions, over 96% of these shooters are men. We know this. There's a collapse in masculinity in this country, and we have to do what we can to try and avert that collapse because it's one of the major contributing factors to our being less safe. So thank you all for your passionate leadership. I'm looking forward to spending more time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Our first question is from Stephanie, and she is a gun violence survivor in Las Vegas. Stephanie?
My beautiful 4-year-old daughter, Dayla, was struck by a stray bullet March 2011. My son, my daughter's twin brother, witnessed what happened that day. She died 2 days later. Firearms are the second leading cause of death for children and teenagers in the U.S., but 4.6 million American children live in homes with at least one gun that is loaded and unlocked, and hundreds of them gain access to a gun and unintentionally shoot themselves or someone else every year. As president, how would you address unintentional shootings by children?
Thank you for that. Can I give you a hug? Is that be appropriate? I have a 6- and 3-year-old boy. I was imagining. I was imagining it was one of them that got shot and the other saw it. I'm so sorry. The biggest downside of running for president for me has been that I don't get to see my family very much. So I get pictures, I FaceTime, I see pictures of my boys, and just that scene that she described, I'm sorry, it's like very, very affecting. You're right that when there's a gun in the household, you're more likely to have a child get shot or the owner get shot than to kill, let's say, an intruder into the house. Those are just numbers. Those are just the facts. So one of the things we can do, and it's very hard to get into Americans' houses where all of these guns are, but if we can convince Americans that personalized guns are a good idea, then again, if the child gets a hold of the gun, then they can't do anything with it. Then it just becomes a very heavy, expensive prop. And that's something that we can push. One of my proposals is to actually help gun owners upgrade their guns to personalized guns free of charge. Because if we can do that, then again, if you're a gun owner, and gun owners are parents, gun owners understand that, and some of them are concerned. So if you say, hey, we'll upgrade your guns for free, when we can do that, like you can upgrade the guns for free, and that would help make kids safer in our homes. I'm so sorry you had to, and that story should not be possible. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you so much. We now have a question from Corrie Pennebaker, who is a gun violence survivor from Wisconsin.
May I call you? Oh, is this on? Is this on? Oh, there it is. May I call you Andrew?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome, because I'm sure we're friends by now. My name is Corrie Pennebaker, and I am my mother's voice. It'll be 40 years this coming September that my mom shot and killed herself. My mom's name was Joyce. She was only 27 years old. I was only 20 months old. I don't know what my own mom's voice sounds like. I don't know what it's like to have my own mother tell me that she loves me. Gun suicides like my mom's happen every 25 minutes in this country. It's the most ignored, but yet it's the most amount of gun deaths in our entire country, but yet we don't talk about it. But since you're a numbers guy, this is something that I'm sure that you're going to know. I think you've already talked about it, that we know that access to a firearm increases the risk of suicide by 3 times. And you know who else that knows that? The entire gun lobby knows. They simply don't care. Yet it has done little to warn, the gun industry has done little to warn purchasers in the community of the risks of suicide. Now, Andrew, can you tell us how you would get the gun industry to adopt responsible business practices that warn of the risks of guns, so that no one ever has to walk for a second in my shoes?
Your numbers are spot on, where if you have a gun in the house, then the odds of self-inflicted gunshot and suicide shoot way, way up. And the odds of that happening also are much, much higher, again, than the gun being used to protect the household. So the gun manufacturers obviously know this. And what's interesting is many gun owners actually know this too, because many of them have had friends and acquaintances who have committed suicide using a gun. And it's actually one of the more, it's disastrous, but it's not, your story, as you know, is not just you, and that it's happening around the country. So hand in hand with this is that we have a mental health crisis in this country. We all get depressed. The question is, when you get depressed, do you have a gun in the house that enables you to do something irreversible and catastrophic that you would regret immediately, the next minute, the next moment? If there was, like, this may betray some darkness inside of me or something, but like if you had like a self-destruct button on your body and you just hit it and then you immediately like disappeared, like I have a feeling like a lot of us would have hit it at some point in our lives, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's like you just be like, and I can disappear now, and then just hit that. It's like, and so the problem is that these guns actually empower those dark thoughts or feelings in us that often pass, but in the moment they can become, so overwhelmingly powerful. So on this side, we have to own the fact that guns are more likely to be used in these terrible, catastrophic ways inside the home than in a productive way. We have to educate gun owners. We certainly have to take the gun manufacturers again and try to have their incentives get aligned to this. So in this way, we can find the gun manufacturers when their guns are used on the owner and then we can fund mental illness approaches. I see gun ownership in the same way I see some other things, like let's call it tobacco. You also know when tobacco, they got hit by various legislation, and then we all see these anti-tobacco commercials. You know, it's like Truth, and there should be a version of that for guns. And so this way we can elevate awareness around the dangers that guns pose to their owners, and educate the public and hopefully empower more people to avoid those catastrophic, irreversible moments.
And now we have a question from Elliot, who is a Students Demand Action volunteer in Michigan.
So I'm a volunteer with Students Demand Action in Michigan, and I'm the advisory board. And we've heard you talk a lot today and throughout your campaign about technology and the future that we have in technology and how it can change our culture. But what I'm worried about is the future of technology and gun safety. And we talked about good things today, like the personalized guns where it's got your fingerprint or whatever on it. But there's also people who can go on the internet and find a gun seller and buy it without a background check. And there's people who can 3D print illegal gun blueprints in their basement. So what will you do? What can we do in order to make sure that technology does not endanger our communities through these methods?
Thank you for the question, Elliot. And if you know anything about my campaign, you know that I believe that technology is very much a double-edged sword. It's certainly not an absolute good. There are many, many negative impacts of technology. And what you describe, 3D guns as an example, the big danger around 3D guns is that you can make guns that are not made out of metal that can evade metal detectors. But right now, those sorts of guns are very low on the list of public health concerns because, frankly, it's just so much easier to get a normal gun. You know what I mean? It's like why would I need to print a gun if I can just go to Walmart and like buy these guns? And the 3D printed guns tend to be less destructive in terms of firing capacity and rounds. They tend to be more of like they're not automatic weapons for the most part. Let's put it that way. In terms of using technology to procure weapons illegally, I couldn't agree more. It's a massive problem. And it's one of the big frustrations I have around the conversation we have on gun control is that even if we were to pass some of these common sense laws, my great concern is that it wouldn't meaningfully affect the supply of guns in the country, and it wouldn't meaningfully affect access if someone wanted to go on the black market on the internet and find a gun. So we have to know that these rules are not going to be a cure-all, and then we have to penalize. If you sell a gun illegally to someone in this country and ends up getting used, we should be coming down on you like a ton of bricks. Like I would certainly have my Department of Justice and FBI be curbing illegal gun sales on the internet if we can get our arms around the legal supply. Because right now the legal supply is much more likely to get a gun into someone's hands right now. Again, the black market isn't as necessary if you can walk into a Walmart right now and buy a gun in many instances. But you're 100% right, technology is going to cut both ways.
So in the 2 minutes or so that we have left, what would be your clarion call to action for this grassroots movement over the next months and years?
Again, I admire your passion and activism, and I sense that many of you have been personally touched by this issue in a way that breaks my heart. Like the fact that we could have so many people here who have been touched in some way. And it's not just you, obviously. You could fill football stadiums and towns full of people who've been touched by gun violence. What I'd ask you to do, and this is going to sound crazy given everything you've already done, but I want you to think bigger. I want you to think bigger about the sort of issues you want to address. Because to me, gun violence is like the last step in this disastrous chain of events. And what we're doing right now is we're looking at the last step, or the last two steps, which is how did this person get a gun, and then how did they end up killing themselves or someone else. But there are typically many things that happen before those last two steps. And as a problem solver, I know that often the earlier you can go back in that chain, the better off you're going to be at remedying the end result. So we have to think bigger about the society that has led people to those last two steps. We have to attack the last two steps with everything we've got, with our heart and soul. But then we also have to try and make families stronger, schools stronger, mental health, culture, particularly young boys who end up becoming young men. And then, if things go wrong for them, unfortunately, they are much, much more likely to end up doing something either destructive to others or in some cases self-destructive. So I want you all, and I know this is an incredible ask of me, but I want you to think even bigger about the kind of society we have to build so that we can genuinely pass along a society free of gun violence to our children.
All right, so I'm going to do the intro to Brenda now. Okay, you're going to go off now?
I thought I was supposed to walk off with it.